I'm going to cover day 5 of the Karen Read trial, and this was the day where we had a couple of important things happen. So they started the voir dire of the ARCA guys, which is really important, and then Ian Whiffen, who's a Cellbrite expert, he also testified, and his carried over into day 6. But so here's what's going on with Ian Whiffen. Let's start there. So his whole purpose in both trial 1 and trial 2 is really to explain away some of the cell phone data, right? They did extractions on Jen McCabe's phone, John's phone, Karen, like everyone's phones, to try and kind of pinpoint where people were and when this happened. They're trying to prove a couple things. 1, they're trying to prove that John never made it in the house. And 2, Jen McCabe never did that search at 2:27 in the morning, that Google search, House Long to Die in Cold. Now, in the first trial, they muddled through this a little bit. And I remember at the time thinking, well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I'm not even a cell phone expert. But the claim was, and Ian said this during the first trial, that the 2:27 Google search never took place. But that was when she opened Google. So she opened a browser window, then she went to bed. And in the morning, she used that same browser window to type in House Long to Die in Cold. And so it time stamped it at 2:27, even though it happened at 6:24 in the morning. And there was another search at 6:23 from a different, that was obvious. Those two registered. So would you close the browser and reopen the browser? I'm not sure how that works. But he basically tried to convince the jury that she never did that Google search. Of course, the defense expert, Richard Green, squashes that. Like, he's basically like, the search was made, the search was made. Every single bit of proof shows the search was made. Now, this year in the testimony, you'll notice there's been some changes in Ian's testimony. One of the things that he really insists on is that John's Apple Health data, or whatever it's called, shows there's elevation changes, right? Like he went up or down 3 flights of stairs, right? That there was movement up and down. Ian explains that away by saying, well, that can happen when you're just driving in the car and the car's going up and down hills. Now, I've never known my Apple Health data to consider that I like hiked a flight of stairs while I was sitting in the car, but for some reason, Ian thinks that's what it does. Now, Boozy Beauty, she has great videos on this because she's local, right? And she's like, have you ever driven in Canton? She did Google Earth and showed all the roads, showed the entire path of what Karen would have taken that night to the Alberts home. And I don't know, from my opinion, every single road looks really flat. But I'm going to talk about this when I get to Jen McCabe's testimony, because her testimony changed. And there's like 3 or 4 things that she threw in this time to help them piece this all together. So anyway, he's insisting that there were big hills that they were driving up and down that would have caused John's Apple data to say that he went up and down flights of stairs. But what Ian left out of his testimony, and this is what Alessi called him on, was there's a couple of things. So 1, we know for a fact, because I believe it was Trooper Garino, measured the distance from the flagpole to the front door. It's 72 feet. And that is at an angle, by the way. If you go straight out to the road, it's probably, 5-6 feet less than that. Let's just say 72 is the distance. What Ian withheld was the fact that John's phone shows between 12:31 and 56 seconds and 12:32 and 16 seconds, he took 36 steps, which they agreed equals 84 feet. So we know that John more than covered that distance. Like, that would take John from the street all the way into the house, and then even maybe a few feet into the house. So that to me tells me that during that time frame, it's 12:31:56 to 12:32:16, John walked in the house. He walked across the yard and went into the house. Now keep in mind, between there at 12:32:09, they show a manual shut off of the phone. So John starts to walk, he clicks off the phone, puts it in his pocket, and walks up to the door. So I totally believe that time frame. That works to me, and I believe John actually walked in the house based on this data. So one of the barriers is going to be Hank's new timeline, because Hank Brennan is saying that Karen hit John with her car at 12:31 and 38 seconds. But at 12:31 and 56 seconds is when John starts walking 84 feet. And somewhere during that walk of 84 feet, he manually shuts off the phone by pushing the button, which they've said that is the only way it can be done. It is a human pushing the button. So John is hit by a car, he's thrown through the air, he hits his head, he's rendered, basically incapacitated, but then gets up and walks 84 feet, turns off his phone, and basically walks 84 feet. And what they have said, this was also left out of Ian's testimony, was that the phone moved in a westerly direction. So the house faces east. The house faces east. Karen was parked facing south, which means that John, when he gets out of the passenger door and he walks toward the house, he would be going in a westerly direction. Based on the things that Ian Whiffen left out of his testimony, like the convenience of the, oops, I didn't realize it was 72 feet. Yes, he walked 84 feet. And yes, he was going in a westerly direction and turning off his own phone. That falls outside of the time frame that they said John got hit by the car. And the time that they say Karen hit him doesn't give her enough time to get back to John's house and be logged onto his Wi-Fi. It's just that it's only like a 4, maybe 5 minute stretch of time. And there's just absolutely no way she could have driven that distance and that quick a time in that snowstorm. He also provided some of that battery data, right? They've been talking about the temperature of the battery. And he put up, like he had this slideshow and he put up all of this different stuff. So he's showing the different temperatures. And if you look at the different activity, it shows that the very last activity that came into John's phone that night was at 1:18 a.m. And that was a call from Karen. So that was the last activity on John's phone whatsoever, was at 1:18 in the morning. And that was the time when they know Karen called him. Now, they don't show any other activity on his phone, according to Ian, until 6:06 the next morning when the calls start again. But if you listen to Jen McCabe's testimony, she said they were calling him starting at about 5:30 in the morning. So John was receiving calls and Karen was calling him. Everyone was calling him first thing in the morning. On his slides, there was no activity between 1:18 and 6:06. So why isn't that? And again, is it something that Ian's leaving out? Is there something critical that happens in that time that doesn't match his narrative, so he had to leave that out? At the end of the day, the whole purpose for Ian Whiffen, if you want my opinion, is he's trying to convince us that Jen McCabe did not make that Google search at 2:27 in the morning. And if it were me, I would be trying a lot harder to prove where was Karen and where was John, and a little less time trying to exonerate a person that's not even a third-party culprit. Makes no sense to me. But that was Ian Whiffen's testimony. More on day 5 in the next video.